welcome to ABBDX News. I'm your host, Ben Dahl. We have an incoming story about the USSR coming from Bailey Mom. Over to you, Bailey.
Thanks, Ben. The USSR has been in a state of distress for several years now. Two revolutions have swept through Russia in the past year. The significant event ended imperial rules and many social and political changes. These changes started the formation of the Soviet Union. On October 24th and 25th of 1917, the Bolshevik leader Vladimir Lenin started what's known as the October Revolution. Following Lenin's death, Joseph Stalin became the dictator of Russia. Stalin created purges known as Stalin's Terror. Stalin targeted members of his cabinet and government. He enforced secret police and created systems of labor camps. These camps are known as gulags. 3 years after Stalin died, Nikita Khrushchev surprised everyone with a speech denouncing Stalin. In this speech, he accused Stalin of despotism, which meant Stalin had absolute power and used it in a cruel way. He stated Stalin not only killed his enemies, but also individuals who did not commit any crimes. In 1991, the Soviet Union disintegrated into 15 different countries. Mikhail Gorbachev created glasnost. Glasnost brought remarkable changes. These changes made a more open government. Gorbachev then introduced the idea of perestroika. He made changes to revive the Soviet economy. Shortly after Boris Yeltsin took over, Yeltsin was against everything glasnost did. Officials vowed to overthrow Gorbachev and undo his actions. Alright, this concludes my report. Back to you, Ben.
Thanks, Bailey, for that wonderful report on the USSR. Now I take you over to Europe, where the reconstruction of Germany has begun after World War II. Here we have Germany, the Great Britain, the US, and France, and with the help of the USSR, have taken part of Germany into an occupation zone. So each one of those four countries took apart Germany and tried to help reconstruct Germany's economy. They tried shifting the eastern border to make Poland a little bit bigger, so taking this part, making Poland a little bit bigger, and making Germany smaller. After a while, some problems have occurred, and Great Britain and the US merged their zones, and then France merged their zones, but the USSR didn't really agree with that part. So they kind of formed off their own and started making their own aid towards Germany. Then, with the help of the US, we gave them $13 billion in economic aid to help rebuild all these fallen economic structures and help with their governments. The Truman Doctrine, the U.S. planned to help with democratic countries, but they would only help them if they were democratic. If they were communist or any other government, they would not help. Truman thought the Soviets were helping Greeks with communist activities, and then the U.S. had another form of containment because they were afraid that the Soviets were actually going to attack them or do something else to Germany that they didn't feel was right. So they had a plan to contain Germany, and if anything happened with the Soviets, that they had a plan to defend themselves. That was around the year 1947 when they came up with that plan of containment. Then came the Marshall Plan, which was the $13 billion of aid into European countries to try and help build back. They gave a speech at about April 3rd, 1948. Then came the Berlin Blockade Airlift, which was June 24th to May 12th, 1949. The USSR over there came up and started blockading all of Germany, so no ground or different countries could get supplies into Germany to Berlin. So the other countries, France, Great Britain, and the US, started taking their Operation Vittles and Operation Plainfire with B-29 bombers going over the top of Germany, and they were capable of carrying nuclear weapons, and that's what the Soviets thought they had, but they were just delivering different supplies straight to Berlin. There was about 300,000 West Berliners to Rheinstag, which was probably around in this area. They tried getting stuff here and then moving closer to Berlin so they could spread all the supplies around Germany. After that, every 45 seconds, an aircraft landed in Germany. And that concludes my report on the reconstruction of Germany. Now we go to a quick commercial break.
Oh, finally, snack break.
Oh, dude, can I have one?
No, mine.
Come on.
Oh, you, come on, you gotta help me.
Hey, not my Doritos. Doritos. Taste of amazement. Alright, welcome back to ABBDX News. I'm still your host, Ben Dahl. Now we go over to my co-anchor, Austin English, for a report on the Cold War.
Thank you, Ben. The Berlin Wall was finished in August of 1961. Berlin Wall was built because United States, France, Germany, and Soviet Union wanted to split up Germany. So basically then, after a while of that happening, U.S., Great Britain, France, they combined basically with each other to help it. And then it turned into West versus East, and basically communism versus democracy. They had 3 different setups of walls. They had 2 small walls and a bigger wall, and in between the smaller walls and the big Berlin Wall, there was a minefield and basically a kill zone. If you were in there, you basically got killed. And that was part of it because people kept trying to destroy it and graffiti and everything. And in 61, around that time too, a U-2 spy plane was flying over USSR and was shot down by USSR. And US was trying to tell Stalin that it was a weather plane that was having problems with its oxygen equipment. And Francis Gary Powers was a pilot of the U-2 spy plane. He was sentenced to 10 years in a USSR prison. And after about 3 years in there, the U.S. traded for him for a Soviet Union spy, Rudolf Abel. This great space race was a race in between U.S. and Soviet Union for see who could get the first land on the moon. It started with U.S. announcing the intel of launching basically a fake satellite into space. And on July 20th, 1969, U.S. won the space race by launching Apollo 11 into space and landing on the moon. Nuclear arms race, also known as just arms race, was Soviet Union against U.S. and other respective allies in the Cold War. U.S. and Britain didn't want to tell Soviet Union about this project that they had going on because they didn't trust Soviet Union at the time. And then finally Truman told Stalin about the project they had, and Truman was surprised at Stalin's reaction because he was expecting them to break out a big fighting. And a while after that, League of Nations decided to eliminate all nuclear users. And USSR invaded Afghanistan in 1979. is basically the last 9 years of the Cold War was fought in Afghanistan, as well as other places. Russia wanted to take a key part in Asia, and that part was in Afghanistan. And at that time, Afghanistan was a vulnerable country in the world. Berlin Wall was knocked down in 1989, and all the Germans were happy because they didn't have to pick a side and stay on that side. Back to you, Ben.
Thanks, Ingrid, for that nice report on the rising tensions of the Cold War. And here's our last report coming from Donovan. So, Donovan, what's the scoop on the Cuban crisis?
Thank you, Ben. The Cuban Missile Crisis could be the start of a nuclear war. The USSR wants to put missiles in Cuba because we have missiles in Turkey. President JFK announced on television that the U.S. will set up a blockade around Cuba, and if the USSR attacks or goes through the blockade, it is an act of war, and the U.S. will retaliate in kind. If the USSR gains control of Cuba, they will be able to put missiles in New York and Washington, D.C., and that is a huge threat to the U.S. We will keep you posted on the Cuban Missile Crisis. Thank you. Back to you.
Thanks, Donovan. Well, that is it for tonight. Thank you for tuning in with us, and have a safe and healthy evening. Thank you, Bismarck.